We laugh. We cry. We learn. But really, what doesn't kill you makes you better at managing clients and everyone. I'm Morgan Friedman, and this is Client Horror Stories.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Client Horror Stories. I'm excited to have with me today the one and only Alex Sanfilippo. How are you doing today, Alex?
Morgan, I'm doing great. Really excited to be here today.
I am, after our original call, which was only like 9 months ago, I'm excited that we're finally having the episode because I've been sitting on the edge of my seat wanting to hear your story.
Man, it doesn't feel like it's been that long, but I'm thinking about it. I'm like, yeah, it's been a while since our first call, and we had a follow-up call as well where just the timing hasn't worked out, but I'm thrilled to be here today and excited to hopefully
I looked it up. It was April, as they used to say in Latin, tempus fugit, time flies. So I can't believe it's like almost August already.
Right.
Before we jump in, what do you like drinking, and what are you drinking today? Because telling crazy stories over drinking preferred alcohol is a definite theme of Client Horror Stories.
Listen, we rescheduled so many times I couldn't move this around, and I met with my personal trainer right before this, and I've learned the hard way that alcohol does not do well for me right after the gym. So typically I've really gotten into Clase Azul, like the tequila. It's like the pretty tall, like white bottle with blue on it for anyone who's like not familiar with that. The Reposado specifically, really enjoy that. And I've just been drinking that neat, or maybe with like a gentleman's cube in it. So like not like little ice cubes, but like one big ice cube. I've really enjoyed that. But today I'm drinking a really fancy custom blend electrolyte drink. Great for a post-workout to get my energy back up and to make sure I don't end up passing out or anything like that. So not nearly as fun, but it's what's needed for us to have a good conversation today.
Absolutely. I already learned something new. I know it's been fashionable to have these one huge cube, but I never heard it referred to as the gentleman's cube, but I love it.
So I think that's more of like a whiskey term, isn't it? You drink whiskey, right? Like I think you're like a whiskey type of person, right?
I love whiskey. It's what I always have. And in fact, I have whiskey in my coffee right now. I'm an Irish coffee guy, but I'm not a connoisseur or sommelier. If it gets me drunk, I enjoy it.
So I think that a gentleman's cube is, I've heard it referenced, but it's typically when you're drinking whiskey. Maybe it's bourbon, actually. I bet that's a bourbon term. And so I don't know what else to call it, but like the real big square cube that doesn't melt quick.
Yeah.
And again, in tequila, I think it brings out some really good flavor. And so if this was 2 hours later or 4 hours earlier, that's what I would have been drinking.
I love it. I've already achieved the goal of learning at least one thing per podcast. And with this preface, I'm at the edge of my seat. Tell us about your most painful client experience while I drink my Irish coffee.
Yeah. I thought a lot about this when we first talked about it, because I'm in a slightly different situation than probably most of your guests that come on here. The fact is I'm a software founder, and it's what I would consider to be a low ticket software, just meaning it doesn't have like a hefty price tag. So I have a bunch of people that I work with. And so I was at first, where there was some back and forth, I was like, Morgan, I don't know if I have like something like this. But when we started our conversation, you brought to my mind something that I think would add value to a lot of people, if whether you have high ticket clients or you're working with clients maybe that like cross the spectrum like me. But I had somebody, this was about 1 year into doing business, and we were doing well, definitely hadn't like scaled or anything like that. So I was still like very green, new at this, but we were 1 year into business, bootstrapped. And so we had like a lot of people starting to use the software, but I was very much so open to calls with people that were using the software or people that were just considered experts in the software space. I was very open to that. But I did have somebody who started using the software demand a call. And it wasn't that I wasn't willing to get on a call in the first place. And that should have been a red flag to me. It wasn't like hey, I'd love to get on a call with you, talk about your software. It was that, hey, I need to talk to you, and it needs to be as soon as possible. And so for me, that was the first time this came up. And I won't give away this person's real name, but we'll call him Adam, if that's okay. So Adam, I still, for some reason, I went against my better judgment and took the call. And and Adam seemed nice enough. Like he was like a New York type of guy. So he's like quick, right? And like, so I was like, okay, he's not really mean. He just sounds mean. So, and so I started having this conversation. He had a list.
Before you jump into what happened, you made a fascinating offhand comment right now that I just want to spend 2 minutes digging into about how he sounded mean, but he may not have been mean. And that is a very subtle and important point, and I think a good lesson for everyone watching, which is you want to client someone you want to work with, someone you don't know. How do you determine if they're mean or not? How do you know if they're an asshole or not? And because you don't know them, one of the primary way we figure out is what are the words they tell you? How do they talk to you? How do they interact with you? And so what happens is they sound mean, but are they actually mean? And your New Yorker point, I'm from New York, is really important because there are just certain cultures, such as New York, where everyone speaks in this blunt and direct and kind of asshole-ish sort of way, even if they're like the nicest, sweetest person on the inside. They're just like directly to the bone and to the point. And I think that for people who are not used to the New York ways, this is easily confused as being a bad person when no, he's just a New Yorker.
Right. Actually, some of the people I've gotten the best input from are actually people. New York is one example, and I live in Florida, so it's very common for New York and Florida to have some sort of connection. They're just honest, and I really appreciate that. It turns out though this definitely wasn't the case. So I did mention I went against my better judgment. Like seeing that immediately, like I should have seen the sign, like demanding a call, saying I need to get a call with you right away. I don't know what it was. I must have been
actually that is a clue already, because in my experience, almost nothing is urgent. Like, I need a call with you right away. Really? It can't wait 24 hours. Is your house burning down as we speak? Is there a ticking time bomb that's going to go off in 3 hours if we don't talk right now? No, of course not. Like, so in my experience, when people have this intense sense of urgency, 98% of the time, it's actually not urgent. And the fact that they pressure you to do it so urgently is a risk factor that they may not be as nice as they seem.
I don't mean to jump ahead, but one of my takeaways from this whole thing, I'm just going to share it now because I think it'd be helpful.
Please.
Is I wrote down these words and I reviewed them every single day. And I've done this for years now since it's happened. But and I'm not trying to sell myself short, but I wrote down the words that nothing I do is urgent. Therefore, I don't need to rush to do anything. And the reality is I work in the podcasting space. So everything I do is by and for podcasters. And the reality is, yes, sometimes we might feel like this is an urgent message to get the world, but it's not life-threatening by any means. And to your point, like it's just not. An example of this, I have a very close friend of mine. He works in an ICU. And if somebody says, I need you urgently there, everyone drops what they're doing and runs because it means someone's actually dying, right? Like something bad is going on that they need to address right away. And like when I remember around the same time of writing those words down, I had a conversation with him about them. I'm like, wait, nothing I do is urgent. Like not that Podmatch, our company, ever like goes down or the website pauses, but if it did, no one's life is going to be threatened as a result. So I write those words down every day as a result of this whole thing.
This is a great, we haven't even gotten to the story yet.
I know.
Look at the learning and the fun. And so I think that is a fantastic lesson. And what I'll add to it is not only is nothing urgent, but a client or potential client not realizing that and thinking things are disproportionately urgent is a yellow flag to look out for from the beginning.
Yeah, I needed to listen to this episode in 2020 is when I needed to hear this, Morgan. So yeah.
So I hope some of our listeners today or whenever this is published are like you, but 5 years younger or 5 years earlier in their career or startup journey to get this lesson in. So now that we've gotten this one lesson out, we haven't got the story. All I know is some guy urgently wanted a call. So what happened next?
Well, so again, against better judgment, I decided to get on a call with Adam. And at first thinking maybe, hey, he's maybe just like one of my New York friends, but I could realize right away that he really wasn't. He had a list of things he wanted to see changed in the software, but it wasn't really suggestions. It was like he became the boss and we needed to meet this list of demands by a certain deadline. And I'm not the type of guy just like roll over and be like, fine, whatever you need. Some of them seem to have merit. And it turns out he had done some work in the software space before. And so he kind of brought his credentials and I was like, man, this guy, like, he seems like the real deal. And so he started like listing all these things off and saying like, hey, you need to have this, you need to have this. If you don't do this is what's going to happen. And he kind of went from the approach of like, hey, and by the way, I'm a paying client. He goes like, I'll cancel my account if I don't start seeing some results on these things. And I don't know why, but so early on in the game where I was already struggling with imposter syndrome, I felt like I needed to do something.
So interesting. Can you give me an example of like one of the sort of types of changes that he was insisting on?
Yeah. So on our software, which it connects podcast guests and hosts for interviews for anyone who's not like familiar with it exactly. Like it's basically looks like a dating app instead of connecting for dates, connects you for podcast interviews.
You and I met for this second date we're having now through Podmatch.
Right? Yeah, which is incredible. I love that. And so one of the things that he wanted was multiple personas for him as a guest. He wanted to be able to click a button and say, okay, I want to talk about golf. And then at any point, click a button and it would change the whole profile automatically saying, okay, now I want to talk about business consulting or whatever it is, right? And he wanted to have like multiple, and he's like charged for how many tiers people have, how many changes you can make.
Right.
And that to me, actually, I was like, well, I sure, I'm a software guy, but I also like, I came from big corporate. I'd love to maybe sometimes talk about big corporate back in the day, right? Like, so I to myself was like, okay, this sounds like a really cool idea. And again, he kind of had like a list of, if you will, I'll call them demands. And he's like, I'm going to cancel if you can't do this because I'm never going to take the time to go back and edit my whole profile and change it to something else other than what it is. And so that's one example of something that was acted upon and demanded.
So I want to point out another yellow flag has come out. Just realized from your giving that example, which is the following: when clients or potential clients have requests of you that are disproportionate from the amount of money that they pay you, and that is a huge red flag. In fact, I think that has never come up, or let's say it's come up indirectly, but I think it's never come up as a direct lesson or learning in an episode before. So now we're at like 80 episodes. So I always want to get at least one new lesson from an episode. And we got this one at least in this explicit framing. And what's important about this is there are a few different reasons why this is important. One is a pattern I've seen all the time. Actually, here's the way I sometimes phrase it. The difference between someone paying you $0 and $1 is much greater than the difference between them paying you $1 and $100. Because if they're not paying you whatever, but as soon as they're paying you an amount, whether it's like 1 or 100, suddenly, no, I'm the client. They're like, do this, do this, do this. And something changes in people's minds. No, I gave you $1. Now I can be your boss. And it takes a level of sophistication in order to think about, okay, I am a paying client, but I'm a $20 a month client. And the $20 client does not have the right to insist on big complex software changes the way $1 million a month client has.
I'm glad that you pulled that point out, because I do think that it's important to think about like what somebody's paying you. And I'll be real, I still to this day, Morgan, I struggle with that one still, because by nature, I'm a people pleaser, and I love taking care of the people that we serve. But you're right, most of our people who use Podmatch, they pay us $6 a month, and I'm not complaining about that. That's the price point. That's kind of how we decide to run things. But you're right. What is someone paying $6 a month? Like, how much leverage should they be able to have over you in the future? But I actually don't know the answer to this. I don't know if I would actually just love for you to share more on this, because for me, I still struggle with it a bit.
My favorite episodes, and this is turning out to be one, are ones where not only is the audience learning, but also you and I are learning from each other. So a couple of things. My first observation to add to the previous one would be, it's not quite that there's like a number or a percentage or something needs to happen, or like a specific number needs to happen, and then suddenly, okay, we should listen to them. It's more about, there's this bug in the human operating system that if you pay someone $1, you start feeling entitled. And the question then becomes, from the point of view of a company such as Podmatch, how do you manage that sense of entitlement so that you listen when you should and you don't listen when you shouldn't, and you keep people's expectations in check. Because what happens is if you're such a people pleaser, you're like, oh yeah, we'll do this and this and this and this. I think that is actually, I actually love that strategy and support that in the very beginning. Like, this is how you build a loyal cadre when you have no clients, no money in the beginning. So on day one, like, hey, we went live and we have 6 users, and 2 of the 6 users made this thing cool. Like, I can't think of anything more important on the software development pipeline to do than that. But when you just get a little bit past that, like as soon as you start having a non-trivial number of users, it quickly turns into, I gave you $1 to do this, I gave you $1 to do this, and then you have so many different people all demanding different things. So there's techie software solutions, prioritization, see what lots of people are requesting, and there are a zillion systems out there. So basically the most requested things you can prioritize, and I actually like that, because then it turns into a stats game. Okay, we can't do everything. What are the biggest things most people are complaining about? But where I feel like it's more subtle, complex, and interesting is the human psychological side of it, where how do we keep people's expectations so that they don't keep on saying, hey, I'm on your first tier at the $2 a month plan, and for me to not cancel my $2 a month subscription, you need to make it compatible with Internet Explorer 2003, because that is what I use. And dude, there are people out there like that. And of course, you and I know that making it compatible with Internet Explorer 2003 will literally never be at the top of your prioritization list. And this person is going to be unhappy. I think it turns into this really interesting marketing and communications question of what energy, vibe, communication approach, communication strategy do you want with your users? And then how do you embody that? So for example, here's a trick on exactly this point that I've used in the past. I've made public the list of features, what people want, or the feature requests, let's say. And guess what? If you have a tiny number of users, when there are more than 6 people, guess what? On every software in the universe, including Gmail, including big established ones, there are going to be thousands and thousands of bugs. So when you start doing that, it becomes super easy to use language like, that is a great idea. We really like it. We're going to add this to our prioritization list because we're growing so much and our servers are crashing. We have about 300 really urgent bugs that we're dealing with. And I'm going to see if I can move it up, but I don't know if I can, but I will try. Using language like that to say, I'm going to try to help you, but being open and clear about it, making it clear, okay, you have all these super, super high priority things. That is one possible strategy to deal with it. I've also dealt with this here's a wildly different strategy that I've just kind of the opposite of that strategy, but I've also used it successfully, which is to kind of turn it into a game, saying, hey, we're growing so well. We just hired another software developer, so we're going to start being able to add some new features. Like everyone, hey, do you want to vote to see if this is the next feature we add? And then by turning to this very, very public game and getting people to vote, whether you listen to the result of the voting or not, guess what? Like lots of people who need Podmatch compatible with Internet Explorer 2003, it's going to be very clear in 2 seconds. And that is not getting many votes. Step back. What I'd say is what these different ideas have in common is that, like, my meta higher level approach would be what we could call expectation management. And so I like being clear and direct while managing the expectations about what's likely to happen and not.
Yeah, I love that last one. Yeah, that makes so much sense. I took notes here. I hope you couldn't hear me typing, everybody.
No,
I was typing up a storm here. But one of the things that I'll mention that I learned the hard way was also not making people feel alone. Example, this was within the last year, so this is more recent. Somebody had a feature request and they were kind of being a little bit demanding. Once again, I've changed. We'll get back into the story, but I've changed a little bit. And I told them, like, hey, they're like, I don't understand how you don't have this feature. And I don't even recall what it was, but something very odd. And like, I don't get it. They were like really frustrated. And I finally just said, hey, listen, there are 60,000+ people using this software right now. You're the first person to ever mention it. And I'm like, I don't understand why you think that'd be a good feature. And I didn't mean to be rude. And they came back saying, well, I'm not everybody. And that really hurt my feelings. And like, again, the people pleaser is like, okay, like I did say that incorrectly. What I should have done, because we do have what you're talking about, the poll that shows feature request, I probably should have just sent them to that and said, hey, I added it here. Why don't you vote on it? Let's see if anyone else votes on it as well. Instead of me outing them as, hey, you're the only one, I could have let them just look at themselves. And what probably would have happened, they would have seen the list and be like, oh, actually, these 3 things are better. Right? They would figure out, people were smart. They'd figure out for themselves, wouldn't they?
100%. So yeah, so I think had you done that, that would have been a more effective strategy. By the way, I'll just throw out a third strategy that I've also used effectively is I also proactively recommend people to my competitors, which is a little bit counterintuitive, but let me explain. Hey, you might want to try platform ABC. They have it. What's good about that is there are 2 different reasons why I like that strategy. First, people who pay you $2 a month and they're being so freaking annoying. I want all those people in the world to go to my competitors because those people eat away. They're the customers who are least profitable, or actually they're not profitable, that you lose money on. And I want the money losing customers to go to my competitors. Oh my God, my Machiavellianness is now on the record now, but I just don't care. That is my Machiavellian reason why I like it. However, there's a second less Machiavellian reason, which is if I put on my enterprise sales hat, my last company just did like huge enterprise sales deals, so I have a bunch of experience in that. On my enterprise sales hat, something that I found is that the single most important thing that you need to get clients and users is they need to trust you. And one of the best ways to build up trust is to proactively on your own say, dude, like there are a whole bunch of cases where our competitor is better. And if you're a better fit for our competitor, then it's better for you. Suddenly, I come off not as a cheesy salesman trying to get the $2 a month and sell my service. I come off as someone that has their best interest in mind, even when it's against the interest of my own company, because I'm trying to drive away the potential customer to that. So what I found is by proactively recommending my customers in my competition, that very often lets them like me more. Now, of course, I do that in a sophisticated way. My favorite way of doing it is one of my favorite words to use is fit. In fact, as someone, I do it a lot bilingually, and I'll point out, like Spanish, Portuguese, there's no word for fit, and that always pains me. But I always say, hey, like, I'm not trying to sell to you. I'm trying to see if you're a good fit, if we're a good fit for each other. And guess what? If you're on your software, it's a requirement for you to do it on Internet Explorer 2003. We're just not the right fit for you.
This goes back to my corporate days, but I think it's valuable to share that last point you gave. There was a competitor of the company I was with. They're both parts manufacturers for like below the atmosphere aircraft specifically. And the companies had bad blood from times before I was ever there. Like, I don't know where it came from. And there was a customer I was on a call with. We were trying to workshop a problem, and I knew that we weren't going to be able to do it. But I knew that competitor, they were the only people that would be able to do it. And like I went, like I would kind of was like, man, the company's gonna hate to know I did this. So I just did it quietly. And I'm like, listen, you need to call this person. I gave them the name and number. Like, I promise they can help you. I'm like, I can do it too. I'm like, but I'm gonna have to charge you more because I'm probably gonna work with them. Just go work with them directly. And I remember getting off that call being like, I hope I don't get fired if anyone ever finds out. I'm like, but two, like, is that person gonna call and be angry because like apparently our companies hate each other? The next day, that person called me and said, hey, thank you for that lead. That was really good. Like we turned it around. And 3 days later, he called me and gave me a deal that he said he couldn't deliver that was 10 times the value of the one I had. And he just said, I'll be a better fit for you than I am. Wow. And that's exactly what you just shared. And we actually ended up building a really great relationship. Even though we were competitors, we had that mutual respect that we're competitors. But sometimes some people are just going to work better with somebody else, right? And I think that's the okay side.
100%. I actually think sales guys get a bad rap because sales guys far too often, overwhelming, tend to be low and cheesy, dialing, trying to make a call, close. But I think the best salesman, and I hope I can include him, best salesman at me, I will say, best salesman at me have this very opposite approach, which is, dude, let's really learn what they're looking for, really try to help solve the problem, see if we're the right ones to solve a problem. If not, recommend the people who are. And so this works great in the enterprise world. And then on, let's say, the consumer side, even for a $6 a month product, I think it's the same sort of principles, just applied in different ways. So for example, if I were running Podmatch's marketing, I would run all the way in this direction. So you could do, like, I would write blog posts, when to use Podmatch and when to use X insert name of competitor here. And then I would actually do a whole series of those for each one of the competitors. So that actually has added bonuses that when people Google like things like, should I use Podmatch or X? Then guess what? Like, your article will come up and it'll be framed in the way you're thinking about. But even more than that, like, I love this sort of marketing approach is, dude, we're like the credible source. We want what is in your best interest. And here publicly on our website in our article, we're going to tell you all of the cases when you shouldn't use us.
Yeah, that's actually really smart. Brilliant. Anyway,
feel free to do it.
Yeah, I got a lot of notes here. I feel like this episode's for me. I hope that other people are getting something out. Hopefully it's not just for me. I'm sure it's not. So
it's so far different than, because we haven't yet gotten into like the real horror of the story. We're about to, but it's been super interesting in these different tangential ways. But this is a good segue to get back to the story itself and the horror.
Back to Adam. Yeah. So I take this call. As I said, he gave me a list of demands because he's the paying customer, right? Regardless of what he's paying. And that there was that one that was the multiple personas for a guest, which seemed to have merit. The other ones that he referenced, though, were fairly small. And then there was a few that it's just impossible to do. We'd have to reset the whole company. And so after the call, I kind of like went through it and I'm like, I'm going to send this guy a follow-up. So I sent him a follow-up and I was like, hey, we're now working on that first one. And I'll get back to that one, that one of the multiple personas. Here's the 5 that we did, and here's 2 that we can't do. And I remember the email was a single sentence. Okay, need a follow-up call. And I was like, okay, like, sure. You know what? Like, well, let me see this through. Morgan, I can tell you're already like sweating just hearing me say it's like, why?
No.
But
by the way, to me, there's some things that I pay more attention to than most people, and there's a lot of things I pay less attention to than more people. But one of the things that I pay more attention to, probably than it deserves, are signs of gratitude. And this is worthy because, like, dude, you're a $2 a month customer and you asked for a personal, like, a change just so you can use it, and they're actually doing it for you. Like, that email should have begun in capital letters. OMG! I can't believe you actually did it for me. Like, this is so amazing. So the fact that it did not show gratitude at the point that it should have is another red flag, or let's say yellow flag, that you can notice in the future. But I also want to point out there's this other bug in human nature. Humans have a lot of bugs that marketers like me take advantage of. And one of the bugs in human nature is, what is this saying? Give a man an inch and he takes a mile, and things along those lines. So for people who have nice personality, who have a generous personality, people whose instinct is to go out of their way to help others, there's this problem that far too many people in the world take advantage of that, and where you help them out a little bit, and their response is to come back and want even more. And for that one, I don't have a good solution to that. The 2 things that I personally use and what I train my teams on: first, to really pay attention for these sort of red flags, to avoid people like that, to avoid even getting into that cycle. Secondly, once you're in the cycle, to have methods so that you can recognize once you're in the cycle so that you can stop it.
Yeah, I didn't think of that at all. I end up taking that second call. And when I took that second call, more red flags. There was no thank you, like you said. And it was first and foremost that, hey, you said you're working on that big one. Like, what's the update? Again, feeling like, I look back now, I'm like, you sounded more like my boss. And he's like, okay, good job on these. And then the other ones I said no to, like, sure or no. He's like, hey, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to be a client long term if you can't do these. And I certainly can't recommend it. And I have a really big network. He's like, you have to find a way to do this. And then he went on to say one of my favorite things, which I've now learned is, for us, it's a red flag. When someone says, I used to work in software, that's a red flag for me. I'm like, okay. So
I want to discuss, before that you mentioned something else I want to discuss.
Yeah.
I have a big network. I want to mention this way because something that I found, which is also a red flag for me, is people who show off. Oh, no, I'm going to bring in lots of people. I'm going to give you lots of clients. Like, people who say that, in my experience, 95% of the time, it's a big fat zero. So now pay attention. There's a saying that I used to love when I was in high school from Margaret Thatcher, where she had a line. She said, being powerful is like being a lady. If you have to say you are, you aren't. And I think that is a powerful quote. Like, the people with the really big networks who will bring you a lot, they look like some guy in the street, while the guy's pretending to. It's like these influencers that are like, yeah, I have $1 billion. And then they're like really on some fake airplane seat.
Right.
Seat somewhere. So I wanted to comment on that, but also the other red flag that you mentioned, I am a software developer. My observation on that is, in my experience, it's not that software developers are bad. So it's not that in particular is the red flag. Rather, that's an example of a broader category of when people think they're an expert in what they hire you to do. And because if I know absolutely nothing about Chinese and I hire a Chinese translator, okay, dude, whatever, like, how do I even judge if his Chinese is good or bad? Then you are calm and reasonable. You trust the professional because I literally have no method to see if he's translating it well. Unlike, on the other hand, if I'm a fluent Chinese speaker and I hire a Chinese translator, and if every 2 seconds, no, you conjugated this verb incorrectly. No, you didn't quite use the proper translation there. It's like people who think they're experts in what they hire you to do, they have a much, much higher set of expectations and make work as much, much more challenging.
We still, to this day, actually, we look at those words as keywords. I used to work in software, so I want to make a suggestion. Like, the whole team knows that is a red flag. Like, here's an example. We had somebody just last week who said, hey, I can't keep on using Podmatch. I hate the way you all set up the memberships. It's a monthly membership and you can use it as much or as little as you want. He wanted to pay per booking. And he's like, and I used to work in software, so I know that's really easy to do. Well, the reality is that goes to the actual very foundational level of our code. And that's not his responsibility to know. We simply said, hey, this probably isn't a right fit. And to your point earlier, we actually suggested a booking agent because that's what booking agencies do. And I was like, here's a good one that we suggest, and they're one of the cheaper ones. And he was furious. He's like, there's $600 per booking. I'm like, yeah, that's what it costs to do what you're trying to do. He's like, I would never pay more than $2 per podcast to be on. I'm like, we can't devalue them that level, and we are not going to go rebuild our software. And so we ended up, we call it rage quitting, just like deleted his account, disappeared, and cussed us out and left, right? And it's like, okay, that's fine. But we know that if someone says, I used to work in, so I know this is easy. Like, if they say that, we know that, okay, they don't know what they're talking about. And they're going to make some very crazy like suggestion that actually would take us years to do.
Yeah, by the way, also, I know this is easy is always a red flag. And because it shows an extreme level of naivete on their part, because even if it's whatever, real life, I am a former software developer, so even if in real life I know whatever, changing the image, changing your logo, I know it's 1 second. Yeah, you just, in the image link, you just upload this file and upload that. It's super easy. But so even if it's from this technical side, someone saying that means they've actually never worked in a team environment or a complex team. Oh, we want to make this change. Okay, it now needs to go through these 3 levels of approvals. Then once it's done, we have to decide where to prioritize. We have to have all these meetings about it where we prioritize it as opposed to the other changes. Then once we actually do it, we have to test it. Oh, wait, no, it's this logo. We have to make sure it resizes correctly. Oh, no, wait, we also need the dark. iOS now has the dark version. We didn't do the dark version of it. So that leads to people complaining, no, I can't see the logo. And then we have to go back. Like, there's just zillions of consequences and implications beyond no, you just update the image link in the HTML. So if someone thinks no, it's just updating the link in the HTML, that means they've never worked in these sorts of environments where you have to deal with other people, deal with production systems.
Yep. I think we need to pull out that little snippet. I need that one. My developer would love you, by the way, because it's so true. Early on, Alex was like, can we move the logo 2 inches to the right? And he's like, what do you mean? He's like, that's 2 weeks of work. I'm like, what? It's just moving a little bit, right? Like, now I know software is a beast. And,
it's like
a lot of work that goes on.
You have to QA it on every browser under the sun, maybe even Internet Explorer 2003.
Right?
So, like every little things have ripples, and this is a reason why, as companies get bigger, they move more slowly, because you need to account for this, and it gets complex. So the person saying no, it's just a line of HTML is like so naive. You're like, oh my god, this person, even if it's not a bad person, out of sheer naivete, is likely to like cause so many more problems as well.
Right. This brings me back to the if it's okay, I'm going to go back into the story here. So the first call, like I took it a little reluctantly. The second call, I think if I really think back, I took that second call because I was proud that we were working on the big one and that we made progress on some. I think maybe my own ego got involved a little bit. And so again, he was like, I don't know if I can keep on working with you. You can't, because you can't do those. I'm like, there's just no way we can do it. Anyway, but I was like, but I'll keep you posted on the top one here, the first one that you mentioned. And we got off the call with a couple additional ideas, but again, really small stuff. It was like a typo here, typo there, which is stuff that I was like, cool, thank you. That's actually really helpful. I got off the call and there was in my mind, that was kind of it. We were just going to quietly work on this thing and keep it kind of slow. And it wasn't a huge priority yet. And then a couple days later, I get another email from this individual saying like, hey, I found some more things, but also you need to meet with this coach. I know a coach who I work with and you need to meet with them. I've arranged a call for the three of us. And I was like, I looked at the coach and really, he had done well in the software space. So again, naive Alex was like, oh, maybe that would be helpful. And so the three of us end up on a call together, which I should have never, ever, ever put myself in that situation. I thought maybe it would help. And both of them like agree. They must have had a pre-call and just steered me in the wrong direction with the way the business was going. And especially with that feature that they were really pushing, which on our development board was really low. And it really influenced me to move that to the top of the list. And so I took that low thing that I don't think anyone else would have voted on and moved it to the top of the list. And I thanked them for their time and for the help with that, right? Like, and so we started working on it. And I'm going to fast forward here. It took us 6 months to work on it. We finished it. We released it. And everyone except for, no, not even this one guy, everyone hated it. I told the person this is done. It's here. And he goes, cool. I'm probably actually going to stop podcasting pretty soon anyway. And that was that was it. And it was such a bad update, confused so many people. We actually end up taking 3 months to revert it back. And honestly, like my long-term friend, developer, 50-50 business partner lost a lot of faith in me, and rightfully so, because I pushed really hard to move at the top of the list, saying it's going to be the biggest thing we do. I look back now and it just sounds so silly to even think that people would want that. Like, and so he's like, I just spent 6 months pausing all these other requests that had like real merit to them to do this. And now you want to take the next 3 months to revert it back. And I was like, yeah. And so this day, that was the single biggest mistake I made was doing that. And the person, again, we released it and didn't even care, didn't use it, and just ended up leaving anyway. And man, lesson to me to give people too much power in my business. And listen, even if at that level and that level of like disrespect, even if this person was paying me tens of thousands of dollars a month, it still wouldn't have been worth it. I think this person was at that point, there was a $14 a month plan. So they're paying me $14 a month times 8 months or however long they're on it, right? Like it wasn't much money, but even if it was at the $10,000 level, I still should not have followed that advice. It was bad advice. And it was just somebody who had an ego wanting to talk and wanting to feel heard and wanting to feel like they had some direction in another company. And anyway, there's no real good way to end the story. That's kind of just, I learned a lot, and I hope we talk more about that, but that was kind of the way that situation ended. It was a really terrible experience.
Wow, definitely qualifies as a horror story. I want to get into your learnings before that, I want to share one learning of mine just from my much younger experiences that might apply here. And this may or may not be something you've learned here or elsewhere, which is the following. One, whenever anyone says something is urgent, the more pressure people put on me, the purposely slower I get. So it's earlier in this episode, we discussed the red flag when people say it's urgent. I purposely slow down when someone is on my ass every day. Do this, do this, do this. Weapons go fast. What are the things that go really fast? Weapons, missiles, bullets. And guess what? Weapons go really fast. And where are they aimed? They might be aimed at you. They probably are aimed at you. While things that are not weapons are things that go really slow. Like if someone walking down the street is not shooting a gun fast at you, they're just walking slow down the street. So first, anything that's urgent, I view it as a signal to do the opposite, because things are urgent. In addition to all the other reasons, it's flame out really quickly. Like this guy, urgent, 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 stopping, not just leaving your platform, stopping podcasting altogether. That is one lesson. A second interesting, a more subtle lesson is younger Alex came in and reprioritized the list to put this guy's stuff at the top. Something I always do on my teams is I'm not a big fan of making decisions. Put this on the top. What I am a big fan of is let's define how we're going to make the decision. So, okay, so like, let's come up with a process through which I think things are reprioritized. And the process is not one guy just says it. One guy moves it on the list. But like there's a zillion different ways to do it. You could have formal criteria there, judge and rank time. You could have a team of 3 people that have a weekly meeting in which they review the list together, and 2 of the 3 need to. Like there are a zillion different ways to do it. But I think an underrated learning is not just, no, stay away from these people. No, don't give into pressure like that. But if you had a process there, even if you wanted this, and you pushed it, like this would have been outside the process. No, your partner and the whatever, the CTO, the other person would have ruled it or looked at their objective criteria. It probably didn't satisfy the objective criteria, so there could have been other ways to have prevented this.
Yeah, those are, I took notes again. Thank you. I know that's not for me, but I'm taking notes here, so thank you. That means a lot.
I enjoy my favorite episodes, like I said before, are the ones where the person I'm talking to is getting real value and help from it as well. I like giving back.
You know, something you talked about that was one of my big learnings. If now's the right time to talk about that, right? I'm going to make sure.
Please, yes.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about your learnings and then wrap up.
Cool. Okay. So for me, the setting the expectation from the start, which you actually mentioned earlier, one of our expectations is we don't do phone calls. And at first, people really got upset with that. Like, but I'm paying you. What do you mean you don't do phone calls? Like, and that was commonly came up. So we use an app called Text Expander where we have some automatic responses. So just to help me and the team to know, like, hey, you type in this little code and it'll spit out the blurb. And whenever someone says I need a phone call, we always remind them the same thing. Like, hey, we're able to keep this software affordable for you because we don't do phone support. We need a lot more people if we had to do that. So we've opted out of doing that. But how can we help you here? And we'll respond really quick. And we always respond really fast. We just opted out of doing phone calls. And the reality is, for a little bit, we were taking them, but we could never do anything for 2 reasons. One, I can't validate that you're who you say you are. I don't know who's calling me and saying they found someone's profile. Give me just reset my password for me and tell me what it is, right? Like, we can't do that over the phone. 2, we need to look at what you're doing. And so sending a screenshot goes a lot further than you trying to explain, okay, I see a little red dot in the right corner and this. And what we found out is the people that needed phone calls, a lot of times they would send us screenshots out of frustration. And it was, sometimes they weren't even on our website. I don't know how. It's like, okay, you're using StreamYard right now. We're Podmatch. Yeah, don't you own StreamYard? Like, nope, not associated with them. But here's where you can learn more about them, right? And so we just found, like, from the start, we just set the expectation of, like, listen, we want to help you as fast as we can, and we want to keep it affordable for you. So we're going to keep it affordable by we're doing stuff via email. Send us the details, and we'll get back to you quickly. That made a huge change. And very rarely now do we get kickback. But we know, we've learned the hard way. If someone pushes back and we go ahead and cater to them, they end up needing their hand to be held the entire way through. Okay, now I finished setting my account. Get on a call with me so I can do my first interview. Okay, I need you in the interview room for my first interview. And they're not trying to be rude. They're just, if you cater to everybody, they need help, right? there's all kinds of examples like this. Like a kid never learns how to ride a bike if the adult doesn't eventually let go. At some point, they know like when it's safe to do that, right? That's that expectation. But at some point, you got to say, okay, you've got this, bud. Like you can do it on your own. Let me let go and let you flourish on your own. But if you never do that, guess who never learns how to ride a bike? And so we just learn from the beginning. If they start off on this really bad foot and just won't relent from that, we know this is a good one to recommend to our competitor, as he said, which is what we'll do moving forward.
Yeah.
So,
as a pretentious lover of poetry, my favorite poetic line to make this point is Rudyard Kipling in the end of the 19th century wrote this great poem about the Vikings, like the Scandinavians, in around the year 1100, used to just always conquer. They always send ships every year to the north of England to pillage and plumage and steal all the money. Then they would go back to like Sweden and Denmark, and like every year a forgotten detail from history. Every year the Vikings would come over, go to all these towns in England, and say, "Give us all your money." And the towns of England were like, "Okay, but don't come back again." They're like, "Okay, thanks for all your gold. We won't come back next year." They would take it. Then they would just come back next year anyway. And this happened like 100 years until England, this is about 1,000 years ago, had basically fought off the Vikings and expelled them. And Rudyard Kipling in the late 19th century wrote a great poem about this that has the chorus. He said, "If you pay the Dane geld, you never get rid of the Dane." So the Danes were like the Scandinavians, and geld is like the old Scandinavian word for money or gold. So the Dane geld was the money that you would pay the invaders when they promised to not invade you again once they pay this to you. So if you pay the Dane geld, you never get rid of the Dane. Like if you pay them what they, if you give them what they want, they keep on coming back for more.
You know, the interesting thing about history is that it just repeats itself. Like there's a saying, there's nothing new under the sun. This is a perfect example. There's nothing, this is the exact same thing that's happening just in our modern world. I thank you for sharing that. I've actually never heard that before.
I'm sure if you Google the phrase, Google Rudyard Kipling, or maybe Chat GPT these days, Rudyard Kipling, if you pay the Dane geld, you never get it. You can read the poem's not long. It's like 16 lines or 32 lines. It's not long, but it's actually a great poem because each verse is about how like the Vikings came and demanded our sin, and it's very poetic, and demanded all the money, we gave it to them. But if you pay the Dane, you never go to the end. And they came back, then they came back. It's a great poem.
Yeah, that's good. You know, this made me think, one of the things that we do is we have what we call our penalty box in our email, which is just, we don't respond immediately. Like we don't want the notion that we're going to respond immediately because we don't want to build a sense of urgency in people's minds. And we've learned if you wait an hour, then people don't typically think that, okay, they're not on 24/7. We don't, right. And we don't want to do that.
Expectation management. And by the way, something I always train my teams on is when you start working with someone, the communication rhythm you set up is what your client expects will stay there forever. So I'm a fan of. In fact, I even have a whole chapter in one of my books about how you should purposely not respond immediately, especially in the beginning of the relationship, in order to set the expectations correctly.
Yeah, I love that. When we did the penalty box idea, comes from like, even if let's say we schedule an email out 4 hours and they respond immediately, and then we respond and they respond immediately. We take longer to respond to them to help set that expectation. Because if we just start doing this back and forth thing, at some point they say, okay, why don't we just go on a phone call? We're clearly just going to send emails back and forth. But also, I personally, and neither do our teams, we don't work well with people that have nothing going on. And I'm not saying you're have nothing going on, but if I send an email 4 hours later after you send me one, and then you respond within 2 minutes, I have to imagine you're just sitting there staring at your inbox because there's not something else going on. And like, and the weird thing is when we look at, we had a free tier right when we launched, like our early beta. The people that were on the early beta, and not all of them, but they were the ones that were responding the fastest. And we found that the people that were paying the most to be on the platform, and so that's up to on an individual level, it's $64 a month. Those people, sometimes they'd have an urgent request, and in our minds it'd be urgent. We'd say, this is important, we need to get to it quickly. We respond fast. They wouldn't respond for 3 days. 3 days, they're like, cool, thank you, that worked. And it's like, wait a minute, these people are paying us more and they're demanding less. And the people that are on the free version are like, why aren't you responding faster? Like, I need this yesterday, right? And it's like, well, are you just sitting on your computer 24/7, not doing any work? So we came up with the idea of the penalty box just to help manage the expectation of like, hey, even if you respond fast, you're still going to have to wait a little bit. We don't do that to be rude. but we just know we can't take care of everyone else if there's one person who is just abusing the communication that we have. And so we work carefully to do that, and we do that out of a place of respect for them and for everybody else.
I love it. I love it. It's often the outliers. You just need one person who uses up a massive amount of time and energy to poison it for everyone else.
Yeah. I got two more takeaways here, if that's okay. Do we have time?
Please, go for it.
Okay. The first one, and it goes back to me talking about like our development pipeline. After learning this and reverting to the tech back and that horrific experience we went through, which I have now built me and my co-founder, we have a better understanding. We had to sit down with that whole thing, and we've kind of built a new higher level of trust. So it ended up being turned around, which I'm grateful for. So there was no bad blood between me and him. He was upset for a while, the whole time he was reverting it, 3 months of him being upset, which totally makes sense. But after that, we sat down, we made the decision to come up with a calculator that determines if we should work on something or not. It factors in the amount of time it's going to take. Is it a security risk? How many people have asked for it? Does it have any growth for the company? Does it look like fun for us to do? All these different things. Like we go through it and we built out the calculator, and the calculator spits out a number. And now our feelings are not involved in it anymore. If one person's asked for it, it's going to take us 12 months to build. I can tell you, it will be at the bottom of the pipeline forever, right? Like never move beyond that. Now, when someone else asks, we'll add one more and see, does that move up the needle? And so we now quarterly, me and Jesse, my co-founder, the CTO, we sit down and we talk through our entire pipeline. We map everything out, and we also say, is there anything though that we want to do because we think it'd be fun and we know it'd be helpful, even if people don't realize it yet. And we have a real heart to heart. And I'll be real, there's maybe one thing a quarter. Sometimes there's nothing that comes up that we're like, yeah, we want to work on this regardless of what it says here. But it's not driven by other people anymore. It's driven by us internally saying, this looks like fun. And also we could see where people don't realize it, but it might actually be really helpful. And typically they're really simple things.
I love it. I want to add a quick footnote to that. I love the calculator. You did something smart and subtle in that calculator that I want to call attention to, because a lot of people do calculators like that, but you did something I almost never see, but I actually do on my teams and my versions of the calculators that I've almost never heard anyone else do out there in the real world. So I'm very happy for you to hear this, which is of the different variables. Yet, is it a security risk? How much time, how many people ask for it, all this kind of stuff. But one of the things you included is how much fun would it be? And I actually think it's amazing. I do the same thing when I do all of my calculations, decide what to do or not. How much fun is it, not just for me, but for everyone, is one of the factors that I factor in. It's so underrated because I think people just tend to do these cold business calculations. But guess what? Even if the cold business calculation ends up, making you 5% more money, if you're all just like not enjoying what you do, it's just like, this is your life. You have to spend your time doing it. You have to retain employees. So I think it's incredible that you factor that in.
Yeah, thank you. That's cool that you, a real pro, recommend that. And I feel we got it.
I'll expand on that for a second. Here is a variation of that I've implemented in all my companies, and I advocate to everyone who asks, which is because I've grown a few different services companies to 100 employees, and I just have a lot of experience in like the tech services, software development space. One of my favorite strategies that I've implemented in my companies is this: to every year make a list of all of your clients. This applies in services companies, like software development companies, digital marketing companies. Every year, make a list of all of your clients, rank them by two different factors: how much profit you make from them and how much you enjoy working with them. Then with those two factors, let's say each one is ranked 1 to 10, multiply them, add them to each other. So you get a 1 out of 100 ranking of those two together, and then fire the bottom 10% like every year. And to me, what I love about my formula is it works like magic, but also it comes to the heart of it, because you want to be working with people that have this combination of making enough money and you enjoy working with them. Those are the best ones. And then the ones that will cause you all the pain, the lost time, the lost energy, the destruction of the enjoyment of working together, are all the ones who have neither of those. Because if they're miserable and you don't enjoy it, but they're insanely profitable, you deal with it. If you really, really enjoy working with them, but it's not that profitable, you deal with it. But the killer is when there is neither. By the way, a Machiavellian marketer advising Podmatch might want to brainstorm on some sort of consumery internal version of that. That's a topic for an offline podcast.
Right. What you just said, I had a conversation with a friend recently who just got into some consulting around the Salesforce space. He's like a Salesforce developer, and his first client, he's like, man, I was like, how's it going? He's like, we're almost finished with our contract. He goes, but he goes, and he's really happy. He's like, I don't want to work with him again. I was like, oh, why not? He's like, he's just like, he's a handful, man. I was like, oh, okay. I was like, and he's like, yeah, I need to find some other clients, I think, even though he wants to rehire me and stuff. And I was like, well, how much? I just asked, like, how much did he pay you? He told me, I'm like, what if he was paying you triple that? And he goes, oh, well, then I wouldn't care. I was like, well, if he wants to work with you again, tell him your price just tripled because you did good work.
Exactly.
And then you're right. Like for him, then it's fun. He's like, I don't care. The guy's paying me this much. I can live my whole life however I want because of this person. Right. So I think what you just shared is an extreme level of wisdom. And my friend, he's like, I never thought of that. He goes, because that would make it completely different. He just knew, he's like, I'm working for $2 an hour because of how this guy is. He was working for $100 an hour. He'd be like, okay, yeah, that's fine, right? I'll take your random weird phone call.
By the way, something that you might want to advise your friend, this is something else I did in my companies. I'm very happy that I use this process, which is in my internal spreadsheet calculations, when I did price estimates, I always had on my internal calculations the annoyance tax. And the annoyance tax went up to 100%. And I literally just put in, okay, how annoying is this going to be? Okay, 20%. And then it would just like factor into the formula. And I think it is perfectly cool and reasonable to factor that in.
Yeah. Going back to my story, the last point I wanted to mention here, and this is, listen, real quick though, I do want to say, like, no bitterness has come from this. And yeah, it was terrifying and not a great situation, but like, we're treating people better than we ever have because we learned from this. And I think that that's important for everybody. Like, you got to learn from these horror stories that we have, right? Like, we've got to be able to learn from them and turn around. For me, 100%, we are in a better place and we treat people better because of this, and we're happier doing the work. And I just want to make sure that there's no bitterness in my speech at all. I don't think there was, but Morgan, I just want to make sure I mention that.
There's none. You don't sound bitter whatsoever. And then on top of that, I'll point out that the whole energy of the podcast is just look at stories from long ago and get learnings from them. And the reason why I explicitly emphasize on the webpage, it says stories from 10 or more years ago. Yours wasn't quite 10 years ago,
right?
but close enough. But I always say stories from 10 or more years ago or long ago. Why? Because if it just happened yesterday, you're going to just be emotional, bitter, angry. But when time passes, time lets you calm down about it, see your own mistakes, learn from it, and time removes the bitterness. So I think it's great.
Thank you for that. The last thing I'll share here is that I've learned to make people take the first step. And just being in software, helping people, what that basically means to me is when people say, hey, Alex, I've got an idea, whether it's for Podmatch or something else, I say, okay, cool. Can you show me what that looked like? Can you explain that in more detail? And the reason I do this is because I found that it doesn't take people long to make a suggestion. That's just like I got an idea, type it up, send. But when you ask them to elaborate, to show you something, 99% don't come back, or they're like, I'm actually not sure. I'm like, okay, well, we can't do anything with I'm not sure, right? But so an example, we had somebody who's like, hey, I really think we should get a conference going. It can be Podmatch sponsor, it can be in this city, because there's a lot of podcasters here. Like, what do you think? How would we do it? And I told them, like, hey, if you figure out the whole conference and have an idea of what your budget would need to be from a sponsorship standpoint, let me know. And I never heard back. And he was apparently very serious about this, to the point of like, I need a phone call. Like, we've already got someone else who wants to organize it, but they weren't serious enough to say, okay, we'll go find a venue. Like, they weren't that serious. They wanted me to take over and do it. I always now say, like, I need someone to make the first step. If you have a suggestion, do a screenshot. Even if you're actually just using like Canva or something like that, do your best to make what you think it should look like, to show me that you actually thought about it more than just they should do this, type it up, send, done, right? I need to know that there's some merit to this first. And that 90% or more of people who used to reach out, there's no response to it afterwards, unless it's just an I don't know. And there's the few times we were like, actually, here's what it is. And sometimes I'm like, that's actually really good. And you've done most of my work for me now. So thank you. And so that's kind of like the last learning that I'll share here today.
But on that last learning, I think it's great. I actually have nothing to add to that one, surprisingly. I will say that I think this is the first time that lesson has come up on this podcast, but like, it's great. It's fantastic for the reasons that you said. Everyone just wants to share an idea and want other people to do the hard work. And if you push it back and ask them to do this tiniest ounce, the little bit of work, 90% of them will go away. So it's great. Alex, we've gotten so much learnings and so many different directions, not only dealing with client horror stories on marketing, podcast, Podmatch, and much more. But above all, it's been fun. Thank you for taking the time to talk to me. And it was great. Lots of learnings. And everyone who's watched the episode, thank you for making it to this point at the end. And I hope you've enjoyed it and learned as much as we have.
Yeah, Morgan, thanks again for having me. And thank you everyone for spending this time with us.